we get off this interview, so you won't be able to see those links there, but our listeners can see now. By the way, if anybody wants to ask a question for Mindie, go to the Edge Fast Blast link or join them in the live chat as we're just playing that as we're coming along. Mindie, when I think about thin places, it just seems to me that's another whole area of sort of a spiritual contact point that has been that the human race has been sort of talked out of. That those sort of things exist. Have you found that there are those that seem like it's their life calling to eliminate any sort of spirituality or spiritual contact, or to replace it with a system? Have you experienced sort of a blocking or people around you that are trying to prevent that from being known?
I have years ago. I think right now we're at a time when that's getting less and less weight in people's lives. You had Rhonda wrote The Secret, and that set off a whole, new way of looking at things, looking at the world and spirituality in general, and you had a lot of spin-offs. I think we're at a time when people are really searching for something beyond what we see in this world. So the naysayers don't have near as much pull. They'll always be there. They always have been there. That's about power and control. That's about somebody saying, I want to control things. And if you believe in something different, I can't. But I don't think they have the weight that they did. I just don't think they do.
She didn't happen to write that book in Maine, did she?
No, she wrote it in Australia.
Well, there you go,
She's
Paul
Jameson.
Jameson.
Rhonda Burns is Australian, and it's a wonderful story how she pulled that together.
Are there thin places in Australia?
I bet there are. I bet there are. I've read a lot about Australia. I've never been there. My husband wants to go very badly, and I have an aversion to long plane rides, so just that obstruction in itself tells me it's probably a place I would find a lot of things to learn.
Would you consider a place like, say, the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem as a thin place? Is that a thin place?
The Holy Land and what's gone on with those three religions in that one little chunk of land has got to be very thin, because there's so much trying to obstruct any future. Where there is obstruction, there's something great behind it. So, I believe that eventually the goodness wins out, and eventually it'll even win out there. But there has to be something pretty powerfully wonderful about those sites, because of all that tries to break it up and destroy it.
Okay, what about when somebody sees an apparition of Mary in a stained glass window or in a reflection of a window? Is that a thin place?
Is it a thin place?
Yeah.
Could be.
That perhaps.
Could be. If Mary decided she wanted to be there, I bet it is. I bet it is.
Yeah,
I mean,
somebody's there. I'm not sure if it's her, but somebody's there. I'm just wondering, maybe perhaps in those buildings where they say, look, there's Mary up in the reflection there. I'm just wondering, maybe perhaps that building was built on a thin place. What do you think?
Could be. Could be.
I'm sure you've heard of. I'm sure you've heard of spooks and stuff running around. Say, like, if a building is built on an Indian burial ground. I mean, that's classic poltergeist stuff right there.
I think that's probably. I think that's a very viable argument. I really do. I think when something is marked as sacred and you disturb that, there may be a repercussion. I mean, why not?
Okay, well, let me ask you something. You talk about this drawing to the thin place, and who's doing the drawing?
There's a question, isn't it? You could discuss that for hours.
Yeah.
I guess that answer might be different for everybody that experiences it. I believe in a God, one supreme creator. That's my belief. I respect everybody's belief. I do not feel compelled to convert people to my way of thinking, but I do feel compelled to share my way of thinking. And if it takes root, great. And if it doesn't, I just hope I'm respected in turn. But I believe that calling is God. I do believe that there is a supreme being, and that I can hear that voice much more clearly in a thin place.
All right. And do you think that you're called, and I say you're as if anyone listening, and anyone feels like they're being called, do you feel like that is where the Creator is where He knows you will flower to your most spiritual being that you could be in that place? Do you think that's one of the reasons He's calling you there at that point?
I don't know. I don't know that it's that on the surface easy to understand. I think that the Creator is always there. I think we're a part of that Creator. That part of that Creator is in us anyway. We're naturally drawn to it. But if that presence is stronger in a certain place, naturally we're going to be drawn to that place.
Well, we talked about wood in the first hour, talking about rocks in this hour. I guess we need to talk about water and fire in the next couple hours. But our first hour guest was saying that he was sort of called up into a tree, and he had a terrible fear of heights to begin with, and he spent 2 years up in a redwood tree, really to disconnect from the system and to reconnect with his own. Maybe that was his thin place up in a tree. I don't know. What do you think about that, Jamie?
Could be.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
So for some, a tree could be a thin place. For others, say in your case, Maryland would be a thin place. Our place, I guess the only one I had is a graveyard. I don't know if I want to go there. So.
Oh, I'm compelled to graveyards. They just like draw me in. I don't know why. I am absolutely fascinated with cemeteries. Mm-hmm. Isn't that strange?
Well, no. I mean, I like to look at the old stones. We saw a marker that said shot in the back by James. What was that?
I don't know, but it was just like a little brief history, and that was about it.
Yeah, shot twice in the back by some Union soldiers. I thought, wow, that's something to have on a gravestone.
That is wild.
Yeah, so I'm beginning to think that. Of course, now I think that everyone probably has experienced. And would you agree that if you're human, you're going to experience some sort of calling, that sometimes strange attachment or calling to an area. So, isn't it the system's way to sort of turn that off from people? It doesn't benefit the system.
Sure, they can't control you then.
Well, what would happen if we turn that back on worldwide? What would happen? Would the system just collapse and break down, and we would go back to what? Thinking in broader terms. What if everyone went to their? Would the earth be filled with love if everyone found their thin place?
Oh, I think so. Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that it's a constant journey. I don't think you're ever fully arrived. You're always searching to go back or to find more.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. But there are the obstructions in life. The natural things, the things that we strive for to survive and then to get ahead. Keep us away from it or distract us from it.
So did you ever go to castles or castles thin places?
Oh yeah, love it. I absolutely have been to castles. I think they're remarkable thin places. I think they were often built on hills. They were often built in places that were thin to begin with. I mean, the place draws you, and that's what I just keep telling myself. Mm-hmm. Why would you have put this here? Mm-hmm. But the place itself draws you to market.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mindie, tell the viewers and the listeners what they can expect to find on your website there.
I have two websites. I have one that is just a photographic website. It has a lot of the photos that we took in England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, and that includes Northern Ireland as well, and of different thin places like Nevern, which we talked about, Cashel, which is probably the most remarkable thin place in Ireland. There's lots of pictures of Nevern, the Bleeding Yew Tree. There are pictures on that site. That's thinplaces.net. So you can see photos and then some explanation about what those are.
Right.
And there's on writingthevision.com, there's a whole section of writings that I've done on thin places and my experience of thin places. Touching the Other Side is a good article that kind of tells the beginner what how you can experience a thin place, for example. So that's what you can expect. The writing on writingthevision.com and the pictures on thinplaces.net.
Okay. Well, Mindie Burgoyne, thank you so much for coming on the Edge broadcast. Can we have you on again sometime?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking me.
All right.
Thanks, Mindie.
Bye.
Thanks.
You bet.
Okay.
You have been listening to The Edge with Daniel Ott. To subscribe to The Edge newsletter, log on to theedgeam.com. That's theedgeam.com, where you can find out more about the guests and topics discussed on the air. The Edge is being brought to you by Internet Solutions, home of affordable website design and low-cost Internet access. Visit Internet Solutions at es4.com. That's es4.com. Until next week, for the Edge Radio broadcast, I'm Chris Moore. See you on the Edge.
News on the USA Radio Network is next.